All right, I think most of us are here. So again, welcome. Welcome everyone to the October program of LAI San Diego. We're excited about today's The Changing World of Regional Shopping Centers program. I'm Brooke Peterson, president of LAI San Diego, and I'm happy to have everyone joining us. Before I turn it over to our moderator and all panelists, I have just a couple announcements. We're excited to announce that we're going to do a holiday party, an in-person event. So please join us December 16th at the Westgate at the on the rooftop. It'll be an outdoor event. So hopefully everyone is able to join. It'll be great to see everyone in person. And then looking ahead into 2022, we're excited to announce that we are finally scheduled and confirmed our gala. So we'll be recognizing our Crystal Globe winner, as well as welcoming in our 2022 class of inductees. So hope that all of you will join us for that as well. With that, I am going to, again, before we get into our program, LAI has been really working to try and recognize and kind of continually include our senior retired members. So with that, we were pleased to do an interview this month with our esteemed Roger Scholey. So I want to turn it over to Danny to play that. Please enjoy. And bear with us as I may have a technical difficulty or two.
Hi, Lambda Alpha members. This is board member Rachel Hurst from San Diego. I'm here in Balboa Park with Lambda Alpha member Roger Scholey. I'm going to be talking to Roger about his career, about what's important to him in the built environment, and what he does to stay abreast of issues in land economics here in San Diego. Hi, Roger.
Hi, Rachel.
Roger, can you tell us about your career?
Yes, I was at the San Diego Union Tribune from 1974 to 2018, and for most of that time I was on the real estate beat, covering growth and development, historic preservation, planning, architecture, all the great things that Lambda Alpha people are interested in. And among the things I would write about was I had a column called Smokestacks and Geraniums for a long time, talking about the good and bad, the mistakes, the historical explanations for San Diego's development, and smokestacks being industry and geraniums being about the environment and good growth, you might say.
I remember that, Roger. It was a great column. Tell us about something here in San Diego in the built environment that you influenced or that you're proud of.
Well, I guess professionally I was very much into watching the housing market in its rising and falling over the years, following the recessions, and always had to find the statistics that had to do with housing. But my passion was Balboa Park and San Diego history. Here we are in Balboa Park. Behind me is the Auto Museum. The San Diego, it was called the California State Building in 1935, the second exposition. And as the president of the Committee 100 in Balboa Park, I helped bring the original murals back to life and then ornamentation of this building. And we're doing the same thing all throughout this area called the Palisades in the park.
Fabulous. And this is a great setting. We're going to talk to you more in a minute about the images behind us. So finally, how do you keep up with land economics now that you're retired?
Well, I read the newspaper every day, and I read all the housing stories. I read about these real estate scandals that are brewing at City Hall and all the other developments in San Diego, which are so exciting. I wish I could be covering it myself, but I enjoy watching it from a distance and understanding what the economics are today.
Well, Roger, thank you so much. This has been a great opportunity for me to be asking you the questions this time. So,
glad to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to Roger. Thank you to Rachel. Danny, I want to turn it over to you for just a moment.
Yeah, thank you, Brooke. we as the board of LAI just felt that it was incumbent upon us to mention that we lost a giant in Jim Daw on October 22nd. And while I'm sure everyone, most LAI members were aware of this and were friends with him since he knew and loved everyone, we thought it was necessary to mention him and express our condolences to his wife, Mary, and his kids and his loved ones. Very, an incredible man, and will be very missed in the San Diego community.
Thank you, Danny. He was a beloved member, as you say, and it is a sore loss, particularly for his family as well as for us. So thank you. I am pleased at this point to turn it over to Tony Pocker with Brookfield Residential, thank you, Tony, for moderating today's panel. I'm going to hand it over to you and let you run with it from here. So thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Thank you, LAI, and thank you, Alan Nevin, for initially organizing this. I would like to start by sharing a couple slides that Alan prepared for us that will set the table for our presentation. So I hope that you can now see a slide of a map of San Diego that lists the 11 regional malls in our region. Can Daniel give me a nod if it's visible?
We can see it.
Good. So Alan put this together for us. There are 11 regional malls in San Diego. The ones in red with the circles in red on the map and the red highlights are Brookfield owned. And we have a speaker from Brookfield. The ones in green are from Westfield, or I guess Westfield Uniball Rodamco. I'm sure I mispronounced that. Sorry, Kim. And there's 4 owned by Westfield. And then there are 4 other malls under different ownership, Levi, Cushman, Simon, Starwood, and then of course Stockdale at Horton Plaza, which is reimagining that into a life science center. If we could then go, I'm going to go to one other pair of graphs that were put together by Alan. So when we talk about malls and we talk about changes, there was an unscientific survey that went out of LAI members to see how often you visit the mall and have visited a mall in the last month. And this is a sample size of 20 here. I think we had a couple stragglers that came in after this slide was made, but 5 of you, a quarter of our respondents, had not visited a mall in the last month. We did have a couple super performers. One visited a mall 10 times and one visited a mall 12 times. I'm not sure if that was a mistake as to annual visits as opposed to the last month, but limited mall exposure. And then, excuse me, that's the number of stores visited, but the data is the same. 5 people didn't visit a mall at all, and most of the people only visited a limited number of times. Sorry, I had those reversed. That trend of our membership is probably fairly typical of what we're seeing in the county. So we have 2 speakers today. I'll introduce them in the order that they're going to speak. You probably read their bios a little bit, so I'm going to tell you why they're here and an interesting fact. So the first speaker today is going to be Ted Lohman. Ted is with Brookfield Properties, and he is working on 3 malls in the county: the Shops at Carlsbad, the Otay Ranch Town Center, and the Chula Vista Center. And he's going to talk about what Brookfield's plans are for those assets. An interesting fact about Ted is he recently participated in a 900-person USC alumni marching band event. So go Trojans. Kim is here to talk about Westfield, her 4 assets that are in the county. We've certainly seen things that are going on at UTC, and hopefully she can enlighten us about the other assets they own and what their plans are. And Kim has visited 6 of the 7 continents. She hasn't been to Antarctica yet, so maybe we'll hear about Antarctica a little bit in future plans. The last couple items is we do have a hard stop today at 12:55 because some panelists have to get on to other calls. So we will be wrapping things up right before then. And also, I believe Daniel has or somehow will be transmitting me questions via email and text. So we will first have both of our panelists speak, and then we will be doing audience questions. So Ted, let's let you take it away. And I believe I need to stop sharing if I haven't already done that.
I think you're good, Tony.
Good. Thank you.
Let me get my slide deck started here. You can see my slide deck, I assume?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Thanks for attending, everyone. I'm excited to chat with you all. So first, before I get into what we're doing with our properties, just real quick overview on sort of how we're looking at retail, at least from my opinion. So a couple points here. Has Amazon killed retail? The short answer is no. Brick and mortar retail is not dead. It's really a matter of needing to right size our retail and how much retail we need. So retailers are being forced to consolidate both in number of stores as well as their size of their stores. And this is really simply about operational efficiencies. Store purchase volumes have decreased, so there's less GLA needed for these stores. Some malls and shopping centers are going to bear the brunt of this consolidation, and others are going to benefit from the consolidation. But at the end of the day, people still want the experience of going shopping and having that touch and feel. It's just, whereas it may have been a every other weekend type event, maybe it's every quarter or annual. It's just less frequent visits. It's all about the experience. People are looking for a better experience when they go shopping, rather than, simply fighting for a parking spot, traversing the parking lot, going to their 2 or 3 favorite stores and then hoping they find their car at the end of the day. They want more than that. What is it that's gonna make that experience special? So figuring out ways to incorporate, unique entertainment options, good food and beverage, Instagrammable moments, incorporating arts, walkability, stuff for kids and families to do and hang out. How do you fold that stuff into the experience of going to the mall? And then lastly, what the key point of our discussion today is densification and integration of additional uses into the mall. The traditional suburban plan of a mall island of retail surrounded by a sea of parking is no longer the highest and best use for the real estate today. So we need to look at what other uses can we incorporate into or adjacent to the mall, and what's the right way to incorporate those. So uses like multifamily, commercial office, medical office, hospitality, a mix of those uses. It's not any one answer for in any one mall. So now you'll see here on the map, this is a little redundant. Tony shared, Brookfield Properties has 3 malls here in San Diego. The Shops at Carlsbad here in North County, and in Chula Vista, both the Chula Vista Center as well the Otay Ranch Town Center. So we'll start in Carlsbad and go south. So the areas you see here in green show the boundaries of Brookfield's ownership. There are 3 boxes that we don't own that are owned by those anchor retailers. And then the parking lot in this mall is actually owned by the city. When this mall was developed in the 60s, there was a deed restriction placed on the parking lot that requires the city maintain the property to serve the mall for parking. And so we're going to be working with the city on the appropriate way to lift that deed restriction to allow for redevelopment on the property. So just getting started in this conversation, we don't really have any plans to share, but we see sort of 2 sides of this mall. The eastern side we see as more of a vibrant mixed-use development. This is the side of the mall that's more heavily trafficked today, whereas the west side, it's a little bit of a dead zone. There's a vacant Sears box that's been vacant almost 2 years, and we see that side as more of a true residential neighborhood. And then the key in the middle there is how do we bring it all together? As I said, we don't really have a plan of this site yet, but our early thoughts for program see residential as many as 1,500 to 2,000 units possible, and up to 300 to 500,000 square feet of new commercial office and retail. Chula Vista Center. So you can see here in the green, Brookfield's property. There's a Macy's box and the adjacent parking that belongs to Macy's. And Seritage owns the vacant Sears building and its surrounding parking lot. So we're in the process of executing on a purchase option that we have with Seritage and intend to close on this property here on the eastern edge this month. And we're going to be working with the city within existing entitlements to convert most of this site into residential. This is a concept plan that we've put together to date. It shows roughly 260 for sale townhomes. And in addition to this, we'll be looking at putting some reinvestment into the remaining mall to improve the retail experience. Otay Ranch Town Center. So here you can see in the green is Brookfield Properties limit boundaries. There is a Macy's box in the adjacent parking that belongs to Macy's. The Otay Ranch Town Center, it's an outdoor mall that's performed fairly well compared to its peers through the pandemic and has a strong outlook going forward. The town center has made a transition towards more community serving businesses in the wake of many national retailers leaving in the 2010s after poor performance that really had nothing to do other than timing. This mall opened up just ahead of the 2008 recession. And then there was some sales performance issues following that with a lack of the households that didn't come until later. But since that time, we brought in some exciting community tenants like Barron's Grocery. There's numerous fitness operators here. There's a veterinary clinic with an adjacent dog park, a number of children and family serving facilities. There's a city library, community center, police substation. And we want to make some shifts that can build on that momentum of these community serving businesses and start to recruit back some of those national retailers. So here's an early plan that we're just beginning to develop. There's really three major moves here, and that's an extension of Town Center Drive, which right now dead ends on the north end of the mall. So we want to continue that street and bring it into the heart of the mall. Here in the center, this is a road that cuts through the mall. We want to cut traffic off in the middle here and raise the pavement, turn this into a people-only zone and into a large outdoor gathering public plaza space. And then lastly, introduce residential uses in the corner, which is mostly undeveloped. And then this is the quieter end of the mall. So the density shown here, if it's all wrap type product, 5 levels of apartments wrapping around a parking garage, could be as many as 800 units. But we're going to be looking at other densities as well, potential garden style walk up and a mix of both for sale and for rent. And that's the presentation.
Thank you. Kim, if we can switch over to Kim's slide deck, and she's going to give a similar overview of Westfield, and then we are going to start some Q&A. Kim, you're on mute, I believe.
Perfect. All right, let me share my screen. Alrighty. All right, really happy to be here today. Thank you for the invitation. As Tony mentioned, Westfield has 4 shopping centers in San Diego, North County up in Escondido, Westfield UTC in the heart of La Jolla, Westfield Mission Valley in the Mission Valley trade area, as well as Plaza Bonita down in National City. Each of our centers really meets the market that the project serves, and really excited about the focus of Westfield UTC and Westfield Mission Valley right now from an overall company standpoint. Starting at UTC, very strong national luxury oriented project for the company. We have seen great growth and development of this asset. We invested and completed a project, as you know, in 2017 of a $600 million expansion, where we closely doubled almost the size of the center and added an immense parking field to the center. As well as in 2019, we opened our first residential program in the US, which is Palisade, which is the building here that's all a high-rise, 22-story high-rise with 300 units. It's a rental apartment building today, which sits actually on a former Goodyear Tire Center. So absolute amazement of the maximization of the site that we were able to create and really start that transformation of this center as a live, work, play environment. This is a center that we continue to look at opportunities. Today, as you know, the center is anchored by Macy's and Nordstrom. We also have Seritage up here in the left corner, which they have redeveloped and invested $175 million to bring actually a retail / office project to the center. And that is just starting to open, and it's such a great change to see really the dynamic of what that transformation, what was Sears for such a long time at the center, really can be relative to strengthen in the entire asset. This is a center that we continue to look at densification plans. We feel we've got the right level of retail. We're continuing to look to really expand on some of that retail offering. There is definitely interest here to look at how office can be incorporated in a larger format. We already have a great selection of CBRE brokerages in our building. We've got different medical offices. We just opened UCSD medical in the building, of really creating this destination that's a one-stop shop based on the community gathering spaces. We have the ice skating rink, and really the company focus is looking at, is there a greater residential opportunity? How do we look at greater office opportunities, as well as potentially even hospitality, knowing there's product around us today in a pretty old format. So this is definitely a center for us that is in our top 5 nationally from a performance standpoint, and really enhancing and creating an additional offering based on the the resort style environment that we've created here. This is just obviously some vision of the existing arrival and entrance at Valet on the right side, and then the completed Palisade residential tower. And again, that really this is a center where we've started bringing that future vision of this shop, work, dine, play, live environment, and creating everything under one roof, so to speak. Mission Valley, we see the same growth opportunity. Today, this is a 1.6 million square foot center between the retail center here, plus the power center we own across Mission Center Road. This is one of the oldest centers in San Diego, built in 1960. It definitely has a lot of class, it has a lot of character, and it needs a lot of love relative to reinvestment to really enhance and bring back that mid-century modern environment that exists today. In the foreground here, we've got the Macy's building, which is a deemed historic building. It's a 4-level building because it has a basement that's 363,000 square feet. We've got a Target at the other side of the assets, which is our highest performing Target in our portfolio with Target, which exceeds 200,000 square feet in size. So you definitely have some very large anchor presence at this center. There's a great deal of surface. We actually also park underneath the entire asset today because that center is on a podium. And so when you look at really how we want to continue to transform this asset today, is if you see all the areas in red, there is massive opportunities to really look at, based on the new community plan that was approved in 2019 for this center, of creating a really large mixed use environment. The company is studying the addition of how you right size the retail, to Ted's point earlier, on a center this size, how you strengthen what that offering is, because today it is a middle market discount type of offering, which is a great complement to the Fashion Valleys, the UTCs, but we lack an experience based on the age of the infrastructure and the lack of investment relative to the core aspects of the overall center. So, the intent here is how to really refresh and bring a new common area experience. How do we look at the 24-hour fitnesses, those bigger box tenants, to create a better offering today from, again, going back to the age of the assets? And then how do we really look at the future of the parking facilities and potentially even some of the retail aspects to create this live, work, play environment and really benefit from the overlay of the community plan approvals. Kind of outside of San Diego, I just wanted to profile. We have a large presence of our centers here in California, And up in Los Angeles, where I also do business, we actually have a grouping of projects in the San Fernando Valley today. Westfield Topanga is a 1.5 million square foot, extremely dominant fashion center with all the large anchor players. We have the Village, which is a 500,000 square foot outdoor lifestyle environment center that is anchored by 24-hour fitness, Costco, and REI, and has a great food and beverage offering. And then we have Westfield Promenade, which is today an existing center that has closed. We have closed the overall center. It was anchored by 2 Macy's. We have an AMC still operating and about 5 restaurants there. And the company was bold to say, you know, there are shopping centers we want to continue to invest and reinvigorate that retail and overlay with the mixed use. And then there are those that we feel don't fit in the market based on the concentration of retail or the changing demographic. And this is one of those scenarios where we felt for Promenade, the picture on the left is the existing enclosed center today that we have actually demalled. We are in the process of, we will be looking at the demolition of the entire site to create the vision on the right, which is a 3.2 million square foot mixed use development that has residential, office, hospitality, and a stadium that we received approvals for from the city of Los Angeles at the end of last year, completely transforming that site. And for a company with the historical, you know, we are Westfield, excuse me, we are a retail driven organization, that we had that vision that retail position didn't work, but we wanted to create something that was much more community based, that actually would be a complement to the other assets adjacent to us. So this is just a snapshot of a regional center that we're not adding on to create a stronger presence around the retail asset. We're actually taking that to the ground and creating very little retail, but a much larger presence of mixed use. So I wanted to give that other view compared to what Ted and I both are also looking at, which is again, the enhancements of these regional centers into kind of the future of where they want to become. Thank you. That was my presentation.
Good. Thank you. You both have really give us a lot of stuff to ask more questions about. I think you've really scratched the surface. The one question I wanted to start with is mixed use and densification. You've both mentioned mixed use. You've both talked about a lot more than retail. But what I'd like to understand a little bit better from both of you is how it really works. Like Ted was describing, for example, the Otay Ranch Town Center with some addition of residential, as well as some tenants that I would really describe more as I'd be more familiar with them in a community or a neighborhood center, like Barron's, like academic and veterinary stuff. And then Kim just showed a slide of the San Fernando Valley, where there's a lot of really intense use on that site. But it, at least from the bird's eye, appear to be kind of horizontally separated. So really, my question is, maybe we'll start with Kim and then can go to Ted. How do you see mixed use coming together at a mall? Is it really going to be vertical, or is it going to be horizontal, or how do you envision that, and how do you make sure the uses are symbiotic, because they've got to be symbiotic, presumably 24/7, 365 days a year if you've got people living there?
Yeah, we definitely spent a fair bit of time. It took us 4 years to get the approvals from City of LA. So there has been a ton of engagement with the community. Again, you look at this type of project based on the scale and the size as a phase project. So you're going to bring, you know, you're going to establish it, I think, relative to a residential. Again, it's low-rise garden style residential. You're going to create an established live environment. You will then move into, as we sequenced it, into the hospitality element of it. Again, trying to establish the office piece would probably be last. Again, a lot of this has to do with the markets, the current demand for some of the uses. There's definitely similar to to San Diego, there is a need for housing in this market. And then, the big player on that site is a stadium. And it was something that we really felt was a point of difference. It was something that we needed in that part of Los Angeles to really create something that could be a much more community-based aspect to the overall project. And so, that would run parallel to some of the phasing and the sequencing of some of the other more established elements, which we would see moving first, which is the residential piece. So it's most likely a 15 to 20 year program to build that entire project out.
Yeah, and Tony, I'll just add to your question, that there isn't any one answer for any property. Every property, every community is different as far as what's appropriate, what's needed. The key is getting, more synergy, more energy. In some properties that may be more horizontally spread, and some it may be more vertical. And, the economics of the given location are going to drive, what you can afford to deliver as well. So they both work as far as vertical versus horizontal, and it's just what's appropriate for the given property.
So Ted, when you're looking at these uses that are non-retail, you mentioned apartments among other things. Are you thinking about building those and then retaining those under the same ownership of the mall, or are you thinking of carving these off, developing, stabilizing, and then selling them to a third party? And same question for Kim after you answer.
Yeah, again, every property is different, but we would look to develop them as separate entities, so we have that flexibility. But as far as which assets are going to be long-term holds versus stabilize and flips, again, there's no one answer. It depends on the property and, in the product.
Yeah, and I think for us, same thing. I think we're actually analyzing it several different ways of bringing a co-developer in to actually lead those efforts, who really have that expertise. And then on a case-by-case basis, depending, again, the proximity to the shopping center. We've got shopping centers like UTC where that building was in the parking lot detached from the shopping center. We have another project that we're working on where we are tearing down an old Sears building, and that residential program literally begins almost right at where the department store sat. So there's a lot more continuity and connection that we need to think about if we were to set it up as a separate entity. But UTC, for example, was set up as a separate entity based on just how the land division occurred.
So we have to ask about the one up in LA. How often do you expect that stadium or that arena to be used, and who's going to use it?
We've been to the market actually with several different operators and sports teams. So there has been numerous conversations about, could it be a soccer league that actually takes over the site? Could it be a training facility for the NFL? Could it be a concert venue? We have certain approvals relative to an indoor or outdoor type of complex that we've got the ability to build. So we've been with Live Nation, AEG, different operators to really understand what could maximize the usage. The intent would be to find something that clearly has on a regular basis rather than a site that would be dormant, similar to some of the big arenas here in LA that, there's only 10 or 12 football games a year, right? That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for a much more active site, not only for either a user to do or but to have a community overlay on top of that, to have a space for people to be able to actually hold events.
Ted, going back to you, you talked about carving off pieces would be situational based on a product. And you mentioned, I think maybe a little uniquely, about looking for some for sale housing on some of your centers. And obviously when those homes are built and then sold, they're gone. They're out of the ecosphere of the mall operator. How do you see that working? Is there a better synergy, a different synergy from apartments? And how does that play out with your overall thoughts on the centers where you're considering for sale?
Yeah, it is different. And again, there is no one answer for any property. I'd say a key thing of, if you do that for sale, and as you say, it's gone from the operator's control, how do you make that connection so it's meaningful? Both landscape, hardscape, the connection from one neighborhood to the next and how it integrates with the mall. Just thinking through that, because once you do lose control, if you will, of that site. It still has to work and make sense for, the subsequent owners. But again, there's pros and cons to renters versus owners. The renters are gonna, I'm generalizing a little bit, but they're gonna tend to be the ones that are going out more, eating out, socializing more, partaking in events. And then on the homeowner side, you have that a little bit about that more pride of ownership. So it makes for a different community. And I think at the end of the day, having a good mix of the two is really what is going to make a vibrant community, not just one or the other.
So from Deb Bossmeyer, she had a kind of a follow-up on the residential that I think I'd like to hear from both of you on, maybe starting with Kim, is how are you addressing both affordable or just workforce housing? Obviously, you've got these centers that have a large employment base. A lot of that employment base is not at the upper end of the income spectrum. And also that would layer into some transit questions, which we'll get to in a minute. But how do you address that, or how are you being asked to address it by local governmental agencies?
Yes, for UTC, we actually did the 10% affordable housing in the building. So we did actually construct the building with the 10% overlay of those units rather than pay the in lieu fee. We felt that was really important, definitely very supportive of that. We did agree as well in the big Los Angeles project that we showed, which has about 1,400 units. We actually agreed voluntarily, not city required, to do 5% extremely low, 5% workforce, and then 5% for more local labor type of employment. So the company actually volunteered as part of the entitlement at the very end to add that overlay to the project. So from our company, we definitely feel it's very important that we really look at how we can help, the overall situation, especially on the low income side.
Yeah, and Tony, on our side, it's really early for all three of our properties as far as the details of what's going to be provided. At the time being, we're assuming we're going to have it inclusive within the project, but details of what percentage and what's the affordability, we need to work with the respective cities of Carlsbad and Chula Vista to sort that out as we move forward.
So we talked a little bit about the housing. Let's talk about public transit now. We've all been hearing in San Diego that Sandag's got a real big push of public transit coming. And obviously we know the North Coast Trolley is by UTC, but Ted, you're also next to the BRT line in Chula Vista that also is part of the overall public transit. How are both of you viewing that? Is it going to be bringing people? Is it just going to be there? Is it just for employees? How do you view public transit, both the BRT and the North Coast Trolley?
Yeah. Do you want to go first, Kim?
Yeah, sure. For us, obviously, we always want to look at it first as an opportunity, right? The connection will go live here around the 20th of November. I think the connection to light rail is an amazing opportunity. But sometimes that comes with some concerns as well. We've done a great deal of study work. We have BART that actually connects underneath the center for us at San Francisco. We're connected to the tube in London at our assets. And yes, different cities, I think, operate differently based on the riderships. The ridership, actually, I was quite surprised on the numbers that Sandag provided for a 2030 expected number of how many people potentially could be using the UTC location. It was, I think, about 2,600 people, ridership a day, which is a 2030 number, because we are at the end we're basically the end of that line, and then the line reverses and goes back toward downtown. So we're interested to see, hopefully we don't have any security issues. We, like I said, have done a great deal of study work. We really want to connect with that trolley rider. We definitely will be trying to understand who is riding the trolley so we can target and understand better, I think, going forward, kind of how to manage that going forward. So still a little unknown since it hasn't actually started yet.
Yeah, and on our side, again, it's early in the process, but Carlsbad, we actually have a transit center on site today. It's a bus transfer station. I think there's 12 different lines, NCTD bus lines that come there and transfer. we're going to look to incorporate a larger transit system within the property that's more than just bus, ride share, scooters, bikes, potential shuttles. And we've got to figure out how to incorporate that appropriately into the development. And then also being able to connect to the Carlsbad Village train station, which is just over a mile from the property. And is there some sort of a shuttle system that can get you from the property to and from the train station? And then as Otay Ranch, as you mentioned, Tony, there's a BRT station on site. Our hope is bringing more residential to the property will expand on the usage of that line on site.
The other interesting piece at UTC is that Sandag actually built one of the park and ride garages on our property. So there's a 500-car garage that is close to being complete on that Genesee side of the asset, which again brings additional people to the overall site. So we too have a bus transit facility that was built as part of our phase 2, which is down on the Genesee level of the property, which is one level below the main mall. So definitely could be an opportunity based on just, again, the attraction of people needing to park there, as well as, I think the biggest thing I should have mentioned is how that UCSD student can actually conveniently get to the shopping center, knowing the proximity of our stops.
So we've talked kind of about retail and we've talked about housing, but there's a number of people, most recently Diego Velasco, I think Robert Valera, Louis Silberg, have asked what other uses do you see synergistic that are appropriate and that you're seeing on your San Diego assets that may make sense to put there, other than just retail and housing? If any.
Yeah, so I sort of touched on this briefly at the beginning of my presentation, but commercial office, medical office, hospitality, those are all uses that we look at in addition to residential. And again, every property, every market, every community is different as far as what the demand is and what makes sense. But I would say beyond residential, it's various types of office uses and hospitality are definitely compatible with the existing retail.
Yeah, I think we're also looking just for additional, on top of what Ted just said, the other experience related items. We're looking at a creative roller rink type of experience. Again, how do you create kind of first to market that doesn't exist today, that has a retail spin, but it also is more of a traffic driver, right? What is that point of difference to get the person off their sofa and get you into a center? Food and beverage is a huge attraction right now to shopping centers. And that could be in simple cafe styles or much larger format entertainment operators in order to, again, be that point of difference for someone to come, which still is retail, but yet it has a different offering, I think.
So with densification, significant densification that you've both talked about, and with the interplay of public transit, housing, et cetera, what advice would you give local elected leaders and staff as you were looking to reimagine these malls? You've talked about some very long entitlements, for one. Ted, you mentioned a 1960s deed restriction up in Carlsbad for retail. That's a 60-plus-year-old probably deed restriction in a market that's really rapidly evolving. And I think, Kim, you mentioned Mission Valley Center has the benefit of a new community plan, which might be a little bit unique. But what advice would you give for elected and staff as they want to see some investment in these assets?
Yeah, I would say flexibility is the word I would use.
Same word I had.
Yeah, these are complex puzzles. They take a long time to sort out, and markets evolve, markets change. So building in entitlements that allow the flexibility to adjust over time to what really makes sense, rather than trying to force any given use or program.
Yeah, I agree. The landscape of retail and shopping centers is changing rapidly. And I think we need to be able to pivot quickly if there's a shift and a change from where we are. And I think all of us are working off of such old programs that, they're so antiquated that you're trying to move basically an elephant across the street, which takes a very long time. So how we can start to maybe piecemeal this and take it in pieces to hopefully expedite the process. And I think the cities are seeing this, right? The community plan I talked about for Mission Valley, they're doing it with La Jolla right now, right? Which should be done in, hopefully, knock on wood, 2023, right? Those are all opportunities. The parking changes for transit priority areas. Again, everything that can be an opportunity, that as small as it may be, it could be a big piece of the puzzle kind of going forward.
So the other leg to that stool is the community, who will always want to have significant input. How do you navigate those systems? Ted, looks like you're in the middle of it in 3 different locations, and Kim in a couple in the county. So how are you navigating that space?
You have to listen to the community. You have to understand what everybody wants. We know historically traffic has been a big one, right? You need to be able to ensure that what you're doing is a complement to the overall demographic, to who you're trying to attract. And we have always felt you have to be on the front end of this with the community. We want to hear their feedback. You want to know what's right for them. In order to have a complementary plan, I think that really is creating a point of difference for a broader demographic, knowing that what all of us are intending to do, but then also to find elements that really meet that person. If that's green space in the center, if that's certain type of hour limitations, right? There's 1,000 ways to cut it, but you've got to listen to the community, I think.
Yep, and just out of that, I mean, you're never going to get 100% consensus from a community. There's always going to be that contingent that just wants no change. But as Kim said, if you just get engaged early with the community, hear what they want, and concessions can be made of happy medium for everyone.
Got to ask a question to Kim that came from Roger Sholey. He had a video on the beginning, so we have to ask this one. Are you sad you sold Horton Plaza?
I talked to Roger a lot about Horton Plaza, actually. Personally, yes. I worked on that asset for 5 years. We had some pretty great plans that, Stockdale is kind of carrying forward. So, I'm super excited to see the development activities. I was just by the center not long ago. So personally, yes, Roger, I would have loved to have been the developer to re-execute that amazing project that transformed San Diego, for sure.
Question on parking. You've both shown structured parking and parking fields. When does it make sense to go with the structure? When does it make sense to go with the field? We might as well start with Ted, because you were showing some plans that seem to retain more fields as opposed to structures.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a simple answer, but it comes down to density. Can you get enough density that's going to bring the value to offset the cost of building it? Which, parking structures are expensive, depending on, the condition of your soils and the design. I mean, it can be up to $50,000 per stall. So it's really about getting enough density where you're offsetting that cost.
Yeah, you need to, parking is usually the biggest piece of the equation a lot of the time, especially in a shopping center. You need to preserve the parking to feed the retail asset, and you need to determine what the right level is, but then you've got to park the new program too. So there's definitely a lot of work to be done to make sure that you've satisfied both of the needs.
So question from Brian Fish, really interesting question. As you do this densification, you're reducing retail GLA in many cases, or at least it looks like you're reducing retail GLA, and you've mentioned decreasing retail sales as people are going online. How are the local jurisdictions feeling about the loss of tax revenue, or are they asking for revenue streams, different revenue streams, and what might those be?
Yeah, so for our assets that we're looking at, we're not reducing retail in all of them. The ones that we are reducing retail, it's because that retail is not working, and we need that consolidation. So there is no loss of revenue if there is no sale. But like Otay Ranch Town Center, for example, we're not looking at reducing retail there at all because that mall is working, and we see a great future there. Whereas Carlsbad, you know, there's a vacant Sears box that's been vacant for almost 2 years. There's a third of the mall on the west end that, you know, sales are weak, occupancy is weak. So we're going to be looking at what can we do to revitalize that property to boost sales and boost the viability for what is working.
Yeah, completely the same thing. You're only going to take retail down that doesn't work. And even if you are taking some retail that is potentially producing today, there's still a belief that if you can actually consolidate, you can strengthen the overall asset and still produce, if not the same, but maybe more sales. So just the elimination of retail doesn't mean you're going to go backwards. You potentially could go actually the other direction because you've created a tighter product that could be much stronger than the dilution today of it spread out so thinly, so to speak.
We have committed to a hard stop in 2 minutes. We have a lot of questions from members that we're not going to have time to go to. But just in a sentence or two, I'd like to ask that each of you wrap it up, starting with Ted and same question for both of you. If you wanted to deliver to LAI members one message or one theme to our audience as you look to the future of regional malls, what would that be, Ted?
A theme. Well, I would say have patience for your local stomping grounds where you like to shop. As I said, these are complex puzzles. I hear a lot from, when are you guys going to do something with that mall, or when are you doing this? These things are very difficult and complex, and they take time to sort out. And then, you've got to work with the community and the local jurisdiction to figure it out. So I would just say have patience and yeah.
Kim, what's your parting words?
This is an amazing time, I think, to be in the retail spectrum based on where this pivot is going. And no one ever thought, I think, years ago that we would be in this juncture working to actually how to reimagine, what has been such a traditional stake in all of our lives, which is this shopping experience. And it's a transformative time, similar to Ted, the flexibility and the patience of we can't invest in every asset right away. This will take time. We want to do the right things at the right projects. So give us a little time to figure it out. And I just encourage everyone to continue going to the brick and mortar and going into the centers and shopping. So we would appreciate that greatly.
Well, look, I'd like to thank you, Ted. I'd like to thank you, Kim. I think it was very interesting. I think we could have spent another hour if we had it. So thank you both. And for our LAI members, I would like to reiterate our December program is on the 16th. It's at the Westgate, our favorite place that we haven't been to in too long. And it's going to be an outdoor holiday party starting at, I believe, 5:30. So I look forward to seeing everybody in person. And with that concludes our program. I'm going to leave it to Daniel to tell us how we shut this down. But thank you, everybody, for today. And I look forward to seeing you in December.
Thank you so much.